again, and welcome back to Phillies Extra, the baseball show from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Scott Lauber, and I write about the Phillies and Major League Baseball. And no matter where you're finding us, Apple, Spotify, Inquirer.com, the Inquirer's YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, thank you as always for spending part of your week with us. And man, do we have a great guest this week. I couldn't be more excited to sit down with Joe Maddon, a three-time former Manager of the Year, twice in the American League, once in the National League, manager of the hex-breaking 2016 Cubs, and quite simply, one of the sharpest minds in the sport. He's also a native Pennsylvanian from up the Northeast Extension in Hazleton and a graduate of Lafayette College in Easton. I can't wait to get his perspective on where the Phillies stand as they enter an offseason that can go in several different directions. We'll also talk about Kyle Schwarber's evolution as a hitter since he played for Joe in Chicago early in his career, how you pitch to Bryce Harper, and much, much more. But first, I got home the other day from the general manager's meetings, and although there wasn't much to report in the way of news, the hot stove is usually kind of still only lukewarm at this point in the offseason, it was a busy 3 days at the Cosmopolitan on the Las Vegas Strip. The Phillies were in, quote, information gathering mode, as Dave Dombrowski described it. He said that they made contact with every team in the league to get an idea of what each club is looking to do. They spoke with a bunch of agents too. And it's interesting because Dombrowski said it's the free agents, in the Phillies' case this year, Schwarber and JT Realmuto, who kind of set the time frame for when things are going to happen. And to a certain extent, that's true. The Phillies' priority is to bring back Schwarber and Realmuto, and until they finally know if those guys are coming back, they can't really move forward with much else. But the teams have some control over the situation too, right? I mean, Schwarber and Realmuto are going to go out on the market, and they're going to see how much interest there is around the league. But the Phillies can certainly say, look, we need to know by, say, the beginning of the winter meetings on December 8th or, another date down the road, like what it's going to take to bring you back. And if we don't have an answer from you by then, well, we're going to have to pursue some of our contingency plans. That's especially true for Realmuto because there are so few alternatives at the catcher position. I wrote about this in the Inquirer, but if Realmuto gets an offer somewhere else that the Phillies don't want to match or beat, they're going to have to probably pivot quickly and trade for a catcher. So in that scenario, it might take more time to find the right match. Anyway, now that the GM meetings are over, the teams are going home. They're going to review all the information that they've gotten. And I suspect we're going to get some real action in free agency and in the trade market between Thanksgiving and the start of the winter meetings. And then in December, it'll really get quite busy before the holidays. We'll get into all of that and a lot more in the Reporter's Notebook segment of our show a little bit later on. And of course, I'll take a reader-listener question at the end, as always. But let's not waste any more time right now. Joe Maddon is someone I've known for a while. I've always loved listening to him and getting his perspective on the game. So here's my conversation with the former Rays, Cubs, and Angels manager and 2016 World Series champ, Joe Maddon. Joe Maddon, welcome to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for asking me, man. I mean, I just left the homeland up there a couple of weeks ago. I've already missed it. I live up in the Hazleton area in a town called Sugarloaf, and It really is magical. So that is home. I'm down here in Tampa right now.
Well, getting a little more warmth. That's good because it's starting to get cold. I just got back from Vegas from the GM meetings, and feels like it's at least 10 degrees colder here than it was when I left at the beginning of the week. So
happens very quickly. Although I'm coming back for the Lafayette Lehigh football game. I'm flying up there next week. Yeah, I think it could be the point where both teams are undefeated within the Patriot League. So and it's a big celebration for the campus and the school of Lafayette. So I'm really eager to get to the game there.
That's awesome. So you and I first crossed paths when you back in 2008 at the World Series. I was a younger reporter covering the Phillies for the Wilmington News Journal in Delaware, and you took the Rays from 96 losses to 97 wins and an AL pennant in your third year in Tampa Bay. And in the subsequent years, especially when I covered the Red Sox for the Boston Herald, I always liked popping over to your pregame media sessions, whether I had anything to ask or not, just to kind of listen in and get your perspective on the game. It's sort of the same reason now, all these years later, that I listen to the Book of Joe, your podcast with the great Tom Verducci. I encourage everyone to check it out if you don't already. And there's so much I want to ask you about the Phillies and about someone you know well, Kyle Schwarber. But I think if I could, I'd like to start with the World Series, since we're all still talking about it and everyone's trying to put into context, where it ranks among the all-time great series. You managed an epic series in 2016, of course, with the Cubs. If I could just ask kind of broadly, and you can take this in any direction you want, is there sort of a takeaway that you had about how this series was played, or maybe more appropriately, how it was managed on either side, whether it was Dave Roberts kind of going with his gut and putting Miguel Rojas in the lineup in Game 6, or anything that sort of stood out to you about specifically the last couple of games of that series and what made it a great World Series?
Yeah. I've been talking about this a lot lately. First of all, how it was played. From the Dodgers' perspective, they weren't as dominant as we thought they were going to be. After the CSs, it kind of looked like, even though the Blue Jays had done a wonderful job, it just seemed as though the Dodgers were primed. And I really thought, based on their pitching staff, it was going to be, regardless of how good offensively the Blue Jays have been, I still thought that the Dodger pitching would dominate. That was my thought. And of course, that did not happen. So from the Dodgers' perspective, even though they won it, I think they won it based on their veteranship and their ability to take breaks and make them actually work for them. It wasn't that they outplayed the Blue Jays. I think the team that actually outplayed them baseball-wise lost, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
So I think on the field, I would say the Blue Jays were really fun to watch, and hopefully that's because it's such a copycat industry. I hope that more organizations try to emulate what they've done, meaning playing baseball again. It's the way they stepping into the batter's box. Their defense was tight. They ran the bases well. They looked to go first to third. They just played the game. They played it hard. They played it well, and I think that's why they won the AL East, which is still one of the tougher, maybe still the toughest division of all, I think. So the game being played itself was interesting. It was two different styles in a sense, but the team with the unflappable group won. That's pretty much what happened. And then the managers, actually, you see, it was almost like analytics were thrown into the fire pit and not really utilized. I mean, it's always going to be set up based on that, and that's just how the game is run today, administrated from above. But the theory and reality are two different things. I mean, the theory is analytics and your data and your information you put on your card before the game. Reality is, like, when all that goes wrong, how do you react to it? Mm-hmm. And I think why the series was so entertaining and considered as good as it was, because you saw two managers having to throw the script away, and everybody was just reacting up until an 18-inning game. There's no script for that. So again, if anything, you have to understand that when things get hot, experience, intuition, feel, gut matters. And I love the fact that I hope people, or those that are in charge, realize that it's just not a math exercise. It's human beings playing a game that's really difficult. They make it look easy. And when things go sideways, that's where your baseball acumen take over. And that's what I thought I saw. So the game was played. Should have been dominated by the Dodgers, was not, because the pitching didn't dominate. Excuse me, Scott. morning voice. So it wasn't played as from the Dodgers' perspective like I thought it would. But managerially speaking, I really liked the way both managers had to just rip it up and go after it.
Yeah, I mean, Miguel Rojas, who hadn't played in, a month, basically, hadn't had a hit in a month, hadn't played in 20-something days, and Dave Roberts says, well, I'm not going to lose the World Series with him on my bench without him playing. And that's sort of a gut thing. Andy Pajes comes in the game there late for defense and in the middle of an inning, no less, and makes, as good a catch as you'll see in a World Series. So like you said, so many things that just, analytics kind of go by the wayside at that point. And it's like, hey, let's manage by experience, let's manage by feel, and let's try to win this game that way. It was great theater, and I thought that it was a victory for baseball for that reason.
100%. I've been in contact recently with an author. Her name is Laura Huang, Huang. She wrote a book, You Already Know, and she's a professor at Northeastern University. I think she might have done some time at Wharton down there too. I'm not sure, but I think. Anyway, I got this little excerpt from Jason Jenks from The Athletic, and he knew I would be into it, and I read it, and then I had to contact her, and I did. And she has talked to like the top CEOs and throughout industry, not just sports, whatever. And almost every one of them will conclude at the end of the day, when it comes down to making like these really important decisions, almost 100% of the time, they're going to go off their experience, their gut, their feel, their intuition. And I really want to see that become part of the fabric once again. I'm not talking about running away from anything. There's old school, there's new school, and there's in school. I think in school is a collaboration between what we've already done in the past and what we know right now. So her talking to her really was good because it galvanized a lot of what I think. And I want to believe that with the AI becoming so prominent right now, that we don't get away from the human being and what that means, because the large sample size is all the data and information. The small sample size, which every analytical dude will run away from, is your experience, your intuition, your feel, your gut in the moment. And that's what's required when things don't really go according to plan.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let's get to the team we cover here and the team that plays in your home state, the Phillies. Kyle Schwarber, someone you know really well, just finished second in the NL MVP race, 56 homer season. That couldn't have been timed any better with him going into free agency. You managed him for 5 years, his first 5 years in the big leagues. And when you were there, when you guys were there together, there were real questions about, his ability to hit lefties and therefore, to be an everyday player and to stay in the lineup. And eventually he gets non-tendered there and he moves on and obviously makes some adjustments and goes to work. And I wonder what goes through your mind this year when you see him set a record with 23 homers left on left and just sort of evolve into a complete hitter. That's got to kind of take you back to those early years with him and some of the things that he went through then.
Absolutely. The guy's all heart. He comes from a family of first responders. He's got a great charity organization. I love his wife, Paige, also. I haven't met the baby yet, but there's a lot to love about this guy. He's real. He's real, and that's why he fits in so well in Philadelphia. Yeah, when we had him there, I really, excuse me, I wanted to hit him leadoff because of all the attributes that we're discussing right now. The fact that I thought he had a good eye at the plate, he would accept his walks, and he could put you up 1-0 before the first hitter's done right there. However, he was deficient against left-handed pitching at that time. Was very he didn't wait on the ball as well as he does right now. Him and Kevin, I love Kevin too. I know Kevin from a long time since he was at U of A. I scouted him as a player. You can see the difference in the way that Schwarber just lets the ball get to him as opposed to wanting to go get it, especially against a left-handed pitcher. The ability to hit the ball to left center has really highlighted that even better. So am I surprised? No. I thought that eventually it would get to that point. If you're the Cubs at that point in his career, it's hard to be patient. I mean, I was criticized for hitting him leadoff, even though I really thought it was a great idea, and you've seen it's worked well even in Philadelphia when they do that. But he really did need to learn a new approach, mentally and physically, against left-handed pitching, and he has. They've done a wonderful job. The other part that was against him was his defense. He had been a catcher. Sorry. He had been a catcher, and when he came up, we put him in the outfield, and of course he was a below-average outfielder. There's no way to describe it otherwise, but he had a good arm. He made some really great throws. And of course, he's one of those guys, if you tell him he can't do something, he's going to prove you wrong, which he's done his entire existence from Indiana on up, and even probably when he was in high school. So these are the things he had to learn. He has learned them. I'm so happy for him and his family that this all happened now, so that probably I would say absolutely a 3-year heavy contract with maybe a 4th year as an option is in order right now. I'd love to see him stay in Philadelphia because I think his sensibilities, his personality plays with that fan base extremely well, and that's not going to go away. However, I know Dave Dombrowski really well. David and I scouted together in Arizona back in the 80s. So David's a real baseball guy. He's going to look beyond certain components of this. They know what they see also, talking to him and the impact he has in the clubhouse. So I would like to believe he's going to stay in Philadelphia, and I think he should. I don't know that, like, if somebody wants to give him a couple more $1,000,000 than the Phillies do, that I still think Schwarber is grounded enough that he's going to go where he wants to go, as opposed to be swayed by a couple extra dollars.
So you just touched on it. The numbers those years you had him in Chicago against lefties: 198, 658 OPS against lefties, and that's over 300 and almost 400 plate appearances. It's a fairly large sample. It's not a snapshot. As a manager, especially with a contending team that's trying to win a World Series, how long do you stick with a guy before you say, you know what, he's just not going to hit same side pitching? And I ask because the Phillies are kind of at that point with Brandon Marsh, another guy you had in Anaheim. 213, 581 OPS in almost 500 plate appearances against lefties. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Schwarber is proof that it can still happen if you stick with the guy, and if he's around the right people, and if he puts the work in, that he can still do it. So how difficult is it to kind of say, all right, like, maybe he's just a platoon guy and that's fine and that's what we have to do, versus we got to stick with him?
Sometimes you're the lucky team when you're the second or third guy, third group. When you're this, sorry guys, this happens in the morning to me. Sometimes you're lucky to be the second or third group that gets a player. Whether it's like a pitcher that becomes 27, 28 with a great arm, all of a sudden things blossom. How does that go? When the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. You just got to be ready to hear these different things. You've heard them for years, but they didn't really, you understand what was being said, but I couldn't get my body to do it. So all of a sudden there's this epiphany, the light bulb goes off, and all of a sudden the player can do what you're asking him to do. So with Brandon, this guy, how wonderful he is. And I think he's going to fall into that same category where he's eventually going to get it. Now, could you be patient enough as a Philly to let that occur? But if they go ahead and platoon him, that's really going to delay the process of him being able to do that. So if they choose to trade him, and if particularly to maybe not a first division team, a team that's not expected to win, when you can be more patient with this kind of development, and then all of a sudden it occurs. But you got Kevin there, you got Longer there, and I mean, that's like, who better to work him through this difficult time and give him the right kind of advice and like straightforwardness, because he's one of those guys, and I love that as a coach. If you don't want to hear the answer, don't ask the question. So you already have the right people involved there. You already have, and you have examples of how it works. So I'd want to see Marshy do great. He's one of my faves. Had him just a brief period of time, but it's just a matter of the amount of patience the Phillies are willing to have. Because if you platoon him, which is the right thing to do right now, you may lose the ability to have him learn how to hit left-handed pitching.
Yeah. The Phillies, they've gone from 87 wins in 2022 to 90 in 23, 95 last year, 96 this year, progressively getting better and better during the regular seasons. They've won 2 consecutive divisions now, made the playoffs 4 years in a row, but they have backslid since winning the pennant in 22, and they've won, 2 playoff games the last 2 years. This year, I think, they ran into a Dodger team that, that won that series. It wasn't a question of the Phillies, maybe beating themselves like they've done in the past, but, they've, still, bottom line is what it is. And they've done it, a lot of this all with the same core. And there's that old adage, right, about the definition of insanity.
Right.
But there's also how do you turn your back on these wildly successful regular seasons that they've had? So I kind of wonder what you make of just maybe where they stand in their competitive cycle, and how far you go with the same group and try to keep getting kicks at the can, and you eventually maybe break through in the postseason with the group you have, because it's obviously a talented group.
Well, first of all, if you're gonna change things, you got to pretty much make sure that we're getting better, right? I mean, they are good. I like watching them. I watch them often. And I think they have grit. I think they have great camaraderie. I love their leadership. I don't know what else you want, really. I mean, to say that we're just going to blow this up and all of a sudden we're going to be as good next year as we were the last 2 or 3 years, and then we're going to do better in the playoffs. That's kind of a reach for me. I would still, with this group, I would look to tweak it a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily look to blow it up. There are just too many good players on that roster. And I really think they interact well. The division itself with the Mets, the Braves off a bad year, whatever, are going to probably be better. But I still think Philly's the right team, the team that has a chance to repeat again as the champs of their division again next year. My biggest thing I would look at is how do we prep for playoffs? What are we doing there? See, my big thing is when you get to the playoffs, I like to do less and not more. And analytical departments like to do more and not less. That time of the year, you've already played all these teams. You've played them. You've seen them. And then there's the meetings. If they become more laborious, more detailed, longer, you're putting more stuff on guys' plate, that would be the mistake I would consider. So I don't know this. I'm just saying I would really look at the prep work because it would always frustrate me. We would go through the whole year. You get to this particular juncture, and now is the time to really let your players get out there, rested body, rested mind, and free. Give them a nugget or two, but let them go play some baseball, which is why we just love the World Series. There was not a whole lot of I can't even imagine. I had Shohei. I've had a lot of these guys. They don't hold on to analytical nuggets when the game's played. They don't. That's for managers and coaches to really decipher before a game. But then again, it has to be distilled. All this stuff. When you get too much information, it only serves to confuse. And so again, I don't know anything here because I'm not privy to this, but I would look into how are we prepping going into the playoffs? What are we laying on these guys and how are we approaching them at that point? Because quite frankly, they look a little bit more uptight to me in the playoffs than they do during the regular season. Like with Arizona a couple years ago, I couldn't believe that. Yeah. So I would really research and analyze my approach into that part of the year because obviously the approach during the year looks pretty darn good and I don't see that changing. So whatever you feel as though there was deficiency, yes, try to add on to that. There's got to be some micro stuff, but to blow that thing up doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I think there's so much, and it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Right.
You drill down on the opponent because you're going to face this one team the next 5 to 7 days, right? And there's so much drilling down, and you're almost picking at this mosquito to try to find, the littlest little things. And sometimes maybe it does make you too tight, or take a little bit of the put a little bit more edge on, or something like that. There's a stat that's going around about Bryce Harper that I wanted to ask you about. So he saw the lowest rate of pitches in the zone, 43% of any hitter in baseball this year. And some people, including his agent Scott Boras, have suggested that maybe the Phillies need to better protect Harper in the lineup. But I went back and I looked, and his first 6 seasons with the Phillies, he saw only 42.6% of pitches in the zone. So it's consistent with the rest of his career, especially here. And I think back to that series you guys played way back in 2016 at Wrigley, where, I think he was the hottest hitter on the planet, I think, coming into that series. And I think you walked him like 13 times in 19 plate appearances and almost gave him nothing in the zone to hit. Maybe that's an extreme example of because of how well he was hitting at the time. But are there certain guys where you say, look, no matter what, we're not going to let this guy beat us in a 3 or 4 game series? And maybe Bryce is that guy, regardless of who's hitting behind him in what lineup that he's in.
Well, I'm telling you, when we did that, he was at the Nationals at that time. It really was based on who was hitting behind him. It was Zimmerman, who was very cold at that time. Anthony Rendon was on that team. Daniel Murphy was on that team. And for me, if you go Harper, Murphy, that doesn't matter if I bring in a lefty. That doesn't bother these dudes. So I am about protection, and I'll argue that with anybody, regardless of the stats indicate the numbers balls out of the zone were the same. Regardless, I still would put somebody back there because I still believe it causes pause with how you're pitching. So even if the 43% are outside, maybe the ones that are inside the zone are just dotted pretty much too, because if we walk them, we walk them. I mean, there's that attitude also. But if there's a guy behind him, I'm telling you, you're not going to want to do it if there's a real guy. So I'm always about that. And, in today's world with the 3-batter minimum, I like a lefty protected by 2 righties. I used to just go back and forth, left, right, left, right, left, right. But once we got to that rule, if I had a good lefty like Rizzo, I wanted two righties behind Rizzo to make sure if they brought in a lefty, they know they may have to pay a price with the two righties coming up behind him. So there's different ways to do lineup construction. And again, the analytical world is just going to go based off that percentage that you gave me. And if they've drilled down even further regarding, okay, so with the balls that were within the strike zone, how much were they dotted up? How close, were they still trying to just, again, if they walk him, it's okay, kind of an attitude. So I'm a big believer in protection. Always will, because I know as a manager, when I get the lineup coming over, there's a hot guy. That's the first thing I look at. And after I've walked a couple guys with the bases loaded, I walked Josh Hamilton with the base loaded once and Corey Seager with the bases loaded each time, because before the game, they weren't going to beat us, right. Kind of an attitude. So, whether you like that phrase or not, whether you believe in it or not, whether you analytically want to dive into that or not, this is, again, feel, experience, gut, whatever you want to call it, based on that moment. So sometimes there's certain questions that are unanswerable by math, because human beings are involved, and it's not Mr. Salada's 11th grade Algebra 2 class. You got to go deeper than that.
Sure. It's funny. Early in the season, I would say 2 or 3 weeks in, they moved Schwarber behind Harper, because for that reason, they said we want Bryce to get more pitches to hit or more pitches in the zone. And they went about a month with that alignment. And I remember toward the end of that month, I remember being in Cleveland and talking to Bryce, and Bryce made the point. He said to me, he goes, the percentage is actually worse. Like, I'm seeing even fewer. And he goes, I don't get it. Like, it's Schwarber. But he's like, I also do get it, because this has been my whole life. I mean, I used to show up at youth tournaments and they would say, we're not giving Bryce any pitches in the zone because we don't want him to beat us. And maybe it doesn't really matter. And then Bryce got hurt and missed a month, and they got away from, the Bryce Schwarber alignment. And for the rest of the season, Schwarber batted second, Bryce batted third, and it ended up where it ended up. But, it does raise the point. Like, you're preparing to play the Phillies, and you look at that lineup, and it doesn't matter who's going well or not well. You're just like, Bryce is the guy that we're going to hone in on, that we're going to make sure does not beat us no matter what's going on.
There's only one thing left to do, and that's have the whole lineup protect him. I did that with Shohei, right? So when it gets to that point, I would hit the guy leadoff, quite frankly. And I don't know how, if they've ever even discussed that, but that's when I go whole lineup protection. That's how I looked at it. And so you build it off that. So go ahead and walk him. Go ahead and not pitch to him. He's very disciplined at the plate. He'll accept his walks, his on base, all that stuff will go through the roof. But when you're going to do that, it would be important to me then to put somebody that 9-hole. If you could I really like the bottom of the lineup to do things also. You just can't throw rummies down there and expect it. That's, i.e. Blue Jays. They demonstrated like a complete lineup what that can do for you. So I would, if all else fails, I would talk to him about hitting leadoff. And what's the comp would be Shohei. Not bad. Not a bad leadoff hitter. And it's done pretty good things for his career. So that's always been my thing. When you get to that point where a really good player, really good guy struggles, I never moved him down. I wanted to move him up. And a guy like him that's not getting pitched to at all, I would call it full line of protection. I put him at number 1 and just tell him, please don't change a thing. If you accept your walks, hit for power, use the middle of the field, whatever you want to think that. But my point is, I want the whole lineup to protect you. And after all, he's only the leadoff hitter the first time he comes to the plate during the game. And then after that, he just revolves around like everybody else.
Yeah. All right, maybe we'll wrap it up with this. Your background, kind of your path to becoming a manager, isn't dissimilar, I don't think, to Rob Thompson's. You were a scout. You did just about everything there was to do in the minor leagues, from instructor to rover to coach to manager to farm director. Finally you get to the big leagues as a coach under Marcel Latchman, right, and Terry Collins and Mike Scioscia, and then at long last you get your shot to manage. Do you kind of feel a kinship with Rob at all, in the sense that he's a lifer who gained like a ton of experience doing everything he can do in the game, kind of walking this long and winding road, and he ends up managing and has some success here in Philadelphia? And there must be some sort of a feeling of connection to the path that he's taken.
So pleased. Absolutely. He's wonderful. And I'm very happy for the opportunity that he got, plus how well he's done. Yes, it matters. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't matter in today's world. It's not just in baseball. Lack of experience, where you could be I don't want to use the word manipulate it, but maybe in a sense control a little bit easier from whomever. It is just right down to the mayor of New York City right now and what's happening throughout the country. I mean, lack of experience actually indicates that you might be a more controllable asset as opposed to one that's going to require a little bit more listening to. The guy's got experience, he's got feel, he's got intuition, he's got all these different qualities, and he knows what he knows. A lot of times, I think in today's world, you like to get people that really don't know what they know so that they can be told what to know. So I love the idea where a guy goes through the steps like he has. And there's some of the hires recently, like Albernaz. I mean, I had Albie with the Rays. I'm very happy because I know what his path has looked like. And obviously then Voter of a very minimal time as a coach, but eventually turns into a very good manager. But Voter's got so many great people skills. That's part of his abilities and ascension right there. And one thing about Voter is I know his ability to listen. So yes, I love the idea that people have to earn the right to get it. It's somewhat, and I take this the right way, insulting when people are just handed this job, because I didn't really feel like I was ready for it until I was 50, 51 years of age when I did get the Rays opportunity, because I still thought there were some boxes I needed to check moving up to really when I got the reins to do this, because I was raised by, the real manager era where he was the manager, he wasn't a middle manager. And those were my idols, like Gene Mock and Whitey Herzog. Marcel was outstanding. I could go through the whole litany of guys. I had Buck Rogers. Gosh, I was around Dick Williams at one point. I mean, I was around all these dudes, and these are they ran the show where the front office was literally afraid to come down to the clubhouse. I swear to God, they did not want to come down there. But now it's that they're there all the time. So I'm happy. I think Robbie done a great job, and you can see his experience pay off, even how he handles difficult situations conversationally, and how he says what he says and how he says it. He knows what he knows, and he's very convicted in it. And I love that. Not only comes from years, I believe, of bus riding, making mistakes and outposts, feeling like you're worthless. Am I ever going to get this opportunity? How do I fight through it? All those things are a factor to become as good of a manager as Robbie is today.
No question. Going for jobs that you don't get and having to go back. And it's like anything. It's like in our business, you look back at early in your career and you say, boy, back in the days when I covered high school sports, right? Didn't want to do it at the time, didn't know that it was going to help me. And really, those are like the years and the lessons that you look back on and go, thank God I did that, because it helped prepare me for what I'm doing now.
I had an awful time in Midland, Texas one year where we weren't playing well, and I kind of lost my mind as a young manager, did things that really did not work out well. But I'm so grateful I went through that moment, because from that point on, I never did anything like that again. I was putting up want ads, classified ads in bathrooms above urinals and behind stall doors, so that I told the players, these are your options if you don't decide to play as hard as you possibly can. Just really dumb stuff. But I'm glad I did it, because like I said, I was very aware of that. The one thing about a manager in baseball, or in base, we're talking baseball, when you start challenging an athlete's heart, be really careful, because that happens way too often. Everybody projects differently, like Garrett Anderson. GA cared as much as anybody, but GA had a different method, path. Same with Devon White. I had Devo also. And then you look at his Darren Erstad, who literally wore his heart on his sleeve, as does Harper, as does Schwarber. So there's different methods to arrive at that point where you actually grab the brass ring and you're a winner, right? So these are the things that I learned, and I've documented, like I said in the Book of Joe, the different moments I've been through. Wow, if I didn't have that experience, I have no idea how. I don't think the Cubs win the World Series with me as a manager. I don't think I get an opportunity to be with the Cubs as a manager.
Joe, this was a lot of fun. And as I said when we sat down, I've always enjoyed, hearing you talking with you, because the conversation is always so interesting. And really, the Book of Joe, the book, and then now the podcast with Tom, it's in my rotation, right? I pop it in when I'm driving my son around to different things. And that's the reason I listen, because I like the perspective and how thoughtful it is. You mentioned you're down in Tampa now for a few months for the winter. What do you have going on down there in terms of the some of the work you're doing down there?
Yeah, we're getting the band back together. Foundationally, I'm organizing a new foundation We're having our first Thanksmas. Our Thanksmas is the program I started here in 2006. That was kind of like the foundation for my foundation, quite frankly. And we feed the homeless. And I want to start including the veterans again. We've had other programs under the umbrella, but we're going to wait on that. We're just going to focus on Thanksmas, December 17th at Ava, our restaurant in South Tampa on Howard, 718 South Howard. Got a great lineup of celebrities already, including Anthony Rizzo, David Ross, Coach John Cooper, Jason Light from the Bucks. I got Derek Shelton's already said yes. Jimmy Hickey's coming back in, and I'm trying to get some of the current players. Freddie McGriff, Crime Dogs, in to be there. We're trying to get Lou Pinella to show up. Johnny Damon. Got a great group. So anyway, that'll be the fundraiser then to start funding actual Thanksmas events that we're going to do. The first one at the Homeless Empowerment Program in Clearwater, which is wonderfully done, and then from there branch out into other ideas and serve other groups in Florida as well as back in PA and back into Chicago. So that's it. That's the start of it. If you're down around, we're going to have general admission tickets also. They'll go real quickly because the venue's not that large, but it's going to be fun. We always have fun with this kind of stuff, and the guys will be circulating, and I promise you'll get a picture with somebody that you might like.
Well, that's great. And if people can't catch, that event down there, I know you do so much work up here as well when you're home in Pennsylvania. So we'll encourage people, anything we can do to kind of get the word out and help out with any of that. I can't thank you enough for taking some of your time here this morning to talk with us at Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I know that I'll be seeing you, I'm sure, down the road.
Thank you, Scott. And could I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
The Hazleton Integration Project, please look that up online. We have this program up there. It started in 2010, where we're bringing together the cultures, the Anglo culture with the Hispanic culture. My hometown now is over 50% Hispanic, and we bought a building. We bought the old Most Precious Blood School. We have this. It's now the Hazleton One Community Center. We serve. It's for everybody, not just the Hispanic community. But how about this last year? We had like 30 some or 40 some kids receive scholarships, including one girl, Ana Batista, who got a full ride at Lafayette College, and she's there right now because of her brilliance and her personality. The girl is so gregarious, so pleased with all of that. So if you go online, look up the Hazleton Integration Project. If you want to donate or want to know more about it, just tour our facilities up there. We become a national model. And that's the other part. See, getting this foundation going again, I will be able to raise money for them once again. COVID and all the stuff that followed that kind of put a dent in it. Do fireside chats. We're going to do that. I've had Cal Ripken. I've had a bunch of different dudes doing that. So anyway, shamelessly, I just had to get that in there also, but I appreciate it.
No, that's awesome. And you mentioned Lafayette. You said you'll be at the Lafayette Lehigh game in a little bit here. And
oh yeah.
So you're definitely, I know you're definitely plugged into everything that's going on up here, even when you're down there.
Oh, dude, I mean, we're playing Lehigh. Lehigh's undefeated. We're undefeated in the Patriot League. I was there for homecoming already against Princeton, which was one of our losses. But so hopefully I don't bring bad luck. But the campus will be hopping. I'll get down to Zayt, my fraternity, go down to the bar room, have a couple of beers with the guys. It's so much fun. The collegiate life in the Northeast in general, to me, is such a big, warm fuzzy. I've been all over the place, but that still is home and always shall be home.
Well, that's great. Joe, thank you again for being with us at Phillies Extra, and I look forward to seeing you down the road. I want to thank Joe Maddon again for joining me. It's time now to open the reporter's notebook, and this week I'd like to share 3 takeaways from the GM meetings in Las Vegas. Number 1, Dave Dombrowski called Bryce Harper. Everything went well, as Dombrowski put it, before saying that he didn't want to share any other details. And the most nonsense controversy we've seen in quite a while, I think, was put to rest, at least until Harper shows up for spring training and gets asked about it all over again. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Dombrowski made some comments at his end-of-season press conference about Bryce Harper having a sub-elite season. Harper seemed to take them the wrong way, somehow, some way, even though nobody ever talked about it or even considered it. There was some chatter on social media and elsewhere about the Phillies maybe wanting to trade Bryce Harper. Never the case. Anyway, all said and done, right? Supposedly. But that wasn't the most pertinent conversation Dombrowski has had with a player since the end of the season. All of baseball expects the Phillies are going to move on from Nick Castellanos either in a trade or by releasing him. So I asked Dombrowski if he's spoken with Castellanos, and he said yes, that they had a lengthy conversation. And without getting overly specific, Dombrowski said he conveyed to Castellanos that, quote, sometimes changes of sceneries can be beneficial for people, unquote. So, yeah, Castellanos is gone. And I think one of the things the Phillies wanted to find out at the GM meetings is whether he's actually tradable. Given his contract, one more year with a $20 million salary, and the condition of his left knee, he said he played through patellar tendonitis, which Dombrowski said is now fine, and the 4-year decline in his production, capped off by his worst season since he was a rookie, and just the fact that the Phillies are so intent on moving him after he lost his everyday job and feuded with Rob Thompson. It's not clear why any team would give up anything to get him, especially if the alternative is the Phillies are just going to release him. But then I was listening the other day to Cardinals president of baseball operations, Chaim Bloom, talk about Nolan Arenado, the 34-year-old former All-Star and Platinum Glove third baseman, who has 2 years and $42 million left on his contract. Here's what Bloom said, quote, his time with the Cardinals has been really good, but we all feel it's best to find a different fit. We'll work on that, and we'll work on that with him. And it got me thinking. Arenado isn't nearly the player he once was. His offense is in decline, just like Castellanos, and although he wouldn't make the Phillies roster filled with 30-somethings any younger, he would serve as a bridge to Aiden Miller while Miller learns to play third base. And maybe the change of scenery theory applies to Arenado too, specifically if it involves playing for a contender. Like maybe he'd find that refreshing, and it leads to a slight rebound in his numbers. The Cardinals would save some money, believe it or not, by taking on Castellanos' contract and dumping Arenado's, and the Phillies would actually get something back for a player that they don't want. I don't know, maybe a bad contract for a bad contract is the way that this thing ends up. Just something to think about as we all try to connect dots for potential moves down the road. Number 2, in outlining the Red Sox biggest offseason needs, Chief Baseball Officer Craig Breslow put middle-of-the-order power bat near the top of the list. Well, the free agent market happens to feature Kyle Schwarber and Pete Alonso. Can't do much better than those guys. Since 2022, Schwarber is tied for second in the majors in homers. Alonso is fourth. So I asked Breslow, does handedness matter? Schwarber is a left-handed hitter. Alonso bats from the right side. And Breslow acknowledged that, yes, the Red Sox lineup at the moment is tilted to the left, with Roman Anthony, Jarren Duran, Wilyer Abreu, Marcelo Meyer, maybe Tristan Cassis, maybe Masataka Yoshida. They're all left-handed hitters. And he also noted that Fenway Park tends to favor right-handed pull hitters because of the Green Monster, which is only 310 feet from home plate. So advantage Alonso, right? Well, then Breslow said this, quote, guys who can hit the ball out of any ballpark can hit the ball out of any ballpark. But there are certain profiles that do fit Fenway better than others. We just want to make sure that we've thought through what the ballpark effects might be before making any decisions. Okay, well, Schwarber is a .344 hitter with 15 homers and a .661 slugging percentage in 113 plate appearances at Fenway. Proof that, yes, he can, in fact, hit the ball out of any ballpark. And let's not forget that Red Sox manager Alex Cora still raves about Schwarber's impact in the 2 months that he spent in Boston after being acquired at the trade deadline in 2021. The Mets sound like they haven't shut the door on bringing back Alonso, especially if he's willing to DH. My sense is the Red Sox will be active on both players with the hope of trying to land one or the other. I still think Schwarber winds up back here with the Phillies, but the Red Sox could be their most serious threat. Finally, number 3, when JT Realmuto was a free agent in 2020, it was important to him to raise the salary bar for catchers. The Phillies ultimately agreed to push the average annual value of his contract to $23.1 million, $100,000 more than Joe Mauer's catcher record at the time. And that's how they got Realmuto to agree on a 5-year, $115.5 million contract. This time around in free agency, with Realmuto's offensive production in a 4-year decline, he's not likely to set any salary records. But his value has always been tied to his extreme durability behind the plate. And this year, at age 34, he started a career-high 132 games at catcher. So I've talked to people who wonder if the important benchmark for Real Muto this time around is 3 years, as in the length of the contract. Now, 3 years for a catcher who will be 35 next season might seem like lunacy, but that's kind of the point, I think. According to the database at SpotTrack, only 2 catchers have ever signed for more than 2 years at age 35 or older. Jorge Posada in 2007 with the Yankees and Yadier Molina in 2018 with the Cardinals. Now, Molina's was a contract extension. Posada got back with the Yankees right at the beginning of free agency. To Real Muto, a 3-year deal when he's in his mid-30s would be an acknowledgement of what has made him special for a decade at the game's most physically demanding position. It would reward his durability. It would reward his ability to play 120, 130 games when most catchers can't do that. Plus, it would be 1 year more than Salvador Perez got a few weeks ago when he signed a 2-year, $25 million extension with the Royals. Perez is 10 months older than Real Muto. And if Perez can get 2 years, surely Real Muto can too, especially from catcher-needy contenders such as the Pirates or maybe the Giants, who are run by former catcher Buster Posey and employ Real Muto's former agent Jeff Berry as a senior advisor in their front office. So maybe the tiebreaker among teams that make 2-year offers would be the willingness to go to a 3rd year. And if Real Muto can get, say, $39 million for 3 years, if that's what it takes, would the Phillies do it? What other choice would they really have? Okay, it's time now for Hit and Run, where we take a question from you out there. Want to join the conversation? Drop me an email at slauber@inquirer.com or reach out on the social media platform of your choice, X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, or you can find me on all of those, or you can always just drop me a line in the comments section on YouTube where you watch this show. This week's question comes by email from a loyal reader and longtime Phillies fan, Mark Inver, who writes, I don't understand why there isn't more discussion of Harrison Bader as a viable option to be signed as the center fielder. He brought great energy to the team, is clearly a great defensive outfielder, and while maybe his outstanding work at the plate was a little atypical overall, he has the ability to hit for average with some power. Has he made it clear for some reason that he doesn't want to stay in Philly? Okay. No, Bader has not given any indication that he didn't like it with the Phillies. On the contrary, he actually put out an Instagram post a few days ago in which he wrote glowingly about his 2-month experience here after coming over from the Twins at the trade deadline. But, as you know, he declined his side of a $10 million mutual option and became a free agent. And after having probably the best year of his career at the plate, he wants to see what he can get in the free agent market. And that market is really, really light on right-handed hitting outfielders. I mean, we're talking about Austin Hayes, Randall Grichuk, Rob Refsnyder, Miguel Andujar. Like, those are the better right-handed hitting free agent outfield options. So you can see why Bader wants to go out there and test his value on the market. Now, Dave Dombrowski said the Phillies told Bader's camp that they are interested in bringing him back. And for the right contract, I'm sure that's true. The Phillies could easily bring back Bader and put him in center field, then put Justin Crawford in left and Brandon Marsh in right, and field, along with a right-handed hitting platoon partner for Marsh. And that would be a really good defensive outfield, and it wouldn't be the worst outfield overall from all standpoints. But you also have to be a little wary, I think, of buying high on Bader, who's coming off his best year, because there's probably going to be some regression there. And if there's a possibility of trading for a righty-hitting outfielder, I keep coming back to someone like Taylor Ward from the Angels and go with Crawford in center and Marsh plus a platoon in another corner. Well, that might be the way to go. So it isn't that the Phillies slammed the door on Bader or that he didn't like it here. It's just that there are other avenues to explore for both sides before they maybe find their way back to each other at some point this winter. Hopefully that makes some sense, Mark. And thank you for the great question. Please keep them coming. We're going to keep the show going in the off season, so I'll have plenty of time to take all your questions. All right, let's leave it there for the week and tell you that all past episodes of Phillies Extra are available by going to Inquirer.com and clicking on the Inquirer Live tab or on the Inquirer's YouTube and Facebook pages. That's always an easy way to catch up on shows that you may have missed. You can also listen to this episode and many others on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, please give us a follow, rate, and review us. Thanks again to my guest this week, Joe Maddon, of course. And thanks to our producer, Mariam Makraz, for helping us put this all together, often on short notice, and for her flexibility in working with a traveling baseball writer who has an unpredictable schedule and isn't sure where he's going to be from day to day some of the time. But most of all, thank you so much out there for listening, watching, and of course, reading Philadelphia Inquirer. We will see you next week, everybody.